Hi, this is Lois Friend and you are Stamping with a Friend. Today we are going to be making 3 cards, 2 of which is a new technique to me. I did these for my June in-person class and all my card makers really liked it, and they've been experimenting and playing and posting on my Facebook that they are enjoying using this technique. Now, I hope that you will use what you have and stamp along with me. I will include a tutorial in the comments of this YouTube video, so you can join along. And like I said, use what you have. I am going to be showing you how to do the blackout technique. And like I said, this was new to me. I had been seeing some videos of people making this card, these are the 2 blackout techniques. And for this one, I have to give credit. I watched a video, I believe the demonstrator's name is Rachel Tessman, because to be honest, the technique is called blackout technique. So I assumed that you needed to use a black marker, or excuse me, a black ink pad to do your work. However, this technique, as you'll notice, there's nothing black on it. But I will get into that more. But I did want to give credit to Rachel Tessman for this technique. Now, this technique this particular card, I saw several people using this particular embossing folder. The third card that we are going to, I'm going to show you is a card that I'm just using scraps from last month's class. This paper is from the Thoughtful Journey. And last month I showed a technique on how to do the tunnel cards. And when I cut off the designer series paper for the particular card, I had a lot of extra side pieces. And it was laying on my desk in a pile. And I kept looking at it, and that paper is so pretty on both sides. And last month we used sort of the other side of that paper because it created more of a landscape look. So I decided, rather than sticking that paper away somewhere for a future date, I would go ahead and use it up this month. And it just makes a real pretty basic card. There's not a lot of embellishment or anything like that. It's just a plain card, but it's really, really pretty. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with this card. And on this card, we are using the Layered Florals 3D embossing folder. And I am going to be using our big guy here. And I know you probably, if you watch and are a regular card maker, you probably already know how to use this, but I wanted to show you. I try to mark on my embossing folders the layers, the sandwich layers, and sometimes that gets a little confusing for whether it's a 3D or whether it's not a 3D, and it gets a little bit confusing. So for this embossing sandwich, I'm going to use the die cutting plate number 1. It's got a number 1 on it. I'm going to lay the embossing folder down. And for the 3D, you use specialty plate number 4. And I'm just going to wind that through. All right. Now, for normal, regular cards, I shouldn't say normal, but most of the time when we use an embossing folder, we are going to use the this as your card front or the layer that's facing out. But in this particular technique, we're going to turn it over and use the debossed side, and that is what that's called, debossed. And what we're going to do is we're going to use our regular markers, and we're going to color. Now, rather than you watching me sit here and color, I did go ahead and colored one, and I have it ready to do the blackout technique. But you just use your regular markers and color in those spots where they're debossed. I see I missed something here. For this one, I left the daisies. I think those are daisies. I don't know. I left them white. So I went ahead, before I started taping, I went ahead and colored that. Now I want to show you a couple of different things, a couple different ways you can color. For this card and for this, I used the markers. And you can see that I got in the edges, and I just used the markers. For this piece, and I haven't mounted it yet, I used our daubers, our little finger daubers, and I don't have one here. Oh, here's one. And I just dipped that in all the different colors, and I daubed. And there's nothing wrong with that. I personally, for this particular embossing folder, I particularly liked the markers. But as I keep saying, there's no right or wrong way to do this. But for these, I just use the daubers. For this one, I used blending brushes. And just put my ink in the ink pad, put the brush in the ink pad, and just, but I found that I couldn't control that quite as much, and I couldn't keep it in the lines. We will be using that on the next card, but for this particular, like I said, it's a little bit more definitive. And so it's up to you. There's no right, there's no wrong way to do it. It's just your preference. Okay, now what I'm going to show you, and my class folks were, when they colored it, it sort of looked like a big blob, doesn't it? I mean, there's pink blob, and there's some green blobs, and then there's a little bit of yellow. What you're going to do is you're going to take your black, I used the black, you're going to take your black ink pad, and now we're going to create magic. I hope you can see, I'm trying. And again, you get as much black on it as you want. If you want it a little bit lighter, go for it. If you want it darker, go for that too. Isn't that something? I mean, that just draws your color out. Now, for this, I did use the black ink. I'm going to set this aside and let it dry just a little bit. For this one, I did it a little bit different. And this is where I said I was watching another demonstrator. She used the basic gray and rubbed it. And that gives it a complete different look. On this one, I did not color a lot of the flowers. I left a lot of it white and just a little bit of green, just a little bit of light. I believe I used Bubble Bath, and then the green for the leaves. I like that effect too. It's really pretty. So while that dries, I'm going to, I pre-cut, get that out of the way for a little bit. For my sentiments today, I'm using the Unbounded Love stamp set, and you probably recognize that from last month because I used it last month. I think I'm going to be like, I really like that set. These die cuts are from the Nested Essential Dies, and I used the 3rd and 4th in size, the graduated size. Okay, so using the Melon Mambo. Have a blessed day. And because this is the photopolymer stamps, I always try to remember to use some padding underneath so that you get a good crisp image. All right. And I want some bling. I don't have Melon Mambo bling, so I'm going to make some. And it's important to remember to color these before you take them off the backing, because if you do it after you put it on your sentiment piece, sometimes it gets smeary. And again, I'm using our white Baker twine. I want Melon Mambo. So I'm using our alcohol markers. This will not work for our regular markers, but the alcohol markers, you can color it however you want. And I'm not going to do this. You know what it look. You know how to color, so I'm not going to bore you with watching me do that. I did that for this one. I don't know if you can see. Okay, I think we're probably ready to assemble for the most part. When I glue embossing folders, because of the ridges, I have found glue works better than a tape runner. I tend to tear it if I use tape runner. So I'm going to use some of our glue. A little pick tool. Oops. Attach that to that, and I'm not going to attach it right now because I do want to do my finish my baker's twine, and then that will go on the front of it. Now, is that easy? See, it's really easy. It's not Not difficult at all, but it's so striking. So, all right, we are ready to move on to card number 2. And that one, I am using my Fern 3D embossing folder. And again, this sandwich is base plate number 1 and specialty plate number 4. For this, I am going to use our blending brushes. Starting with the lightest color, Lemon Molly is our lightest color, and I tend to always start off the paper because I get blotches if I don't rub it off just a little bit. And you can put as much as you want. Okay, that's good. Now let's do the next color, and that is Granny Apple Green. Okay. And next is Old Olive. Okay. And for this, I'm going to use, instead of black, we're blacking it out, but we're actually greening it out. And I am going to use the Mossy Meadow. And when you use these ink pads, you need to hold because they slide. And if you're moving it up and down and around, it will slide. And for me, that didn't work real well. I ended up getting it kind of stuck on the paper at one point in time. So my ink pad has been used a lot over the course of the last, because of class, I need to re-ink it, but so it's not going to get real dark, but I really like it. It makes me feel like I'm in a bed of ferns. It's like it just brings it to life off the cardstock. Okay, so that is that. And for this card, I need to wipe my fingers. I've got green. This is a little bit messy technique. So you need paper towels or something close by. Okay. And again, I did a lot of the die cutting before I got started because I tend to talk a little too long, and it takes forever for my video to upload when I'm uploading. Last month it took like hours. So I went ahead and I cut for the sentiment, and I believe this is from the Unbounded Love die cut. I think that's where it's from. I'll have to check for sure, but I think that's where it's from. And again, I'm using the Unbounded Love set for the sentiment. And I'm going to use Mossy Meadow. Got that a little far away. I didn't have it quite as close. All right. And I went ahead before we started and I cut the foliage or whatever, however you say it, ahead of time. And I used the dies from the Delicate Forest dies. But as I said when I got started, use what you have. That's the purpose of my videos every month, is to get you to use what you have. So what I'm going to do is, here's my glue dots. Sorry, I'm a little rattled here, I guess. I don't know. All right. I'm going to use glue dots for on the back of this. To attach these embellishments. Another one. And I can always adjust that. And that'll go like that. And when I do a darker card like this, I generally always use another piece for inside to write your sentiment. And I will finish this up. I am going to add some of our metallic bling. This would make a masculine card if anybody's making Father's Day cards. And then I will assemble this after we're done. But that's basically the idea, and that is the finished product. I did a few different colors on this one. I couldn't figure out what I liked, so I just kept adding, and I like it a little bit more subtle than that. That's a little flashier for me than normal. I tend to be a little bit more subtle. All right, and the last card, as I said, this is one that I was using up my scraps. And for this, I used, things have gotten messed up at my table. I'm sorry. The embossing folder is the Distress Tile 3D. And again, I think I forgot to say on the fern, also make sure your you're inking on the back side of the card. Okay. This one, we're not going to use the debossed side. We're going to use this side. All right. And I did a lot of die cutting before. And this, this embossing, or I'm sorry, this die cut is from the Spotlight on Nature dies. And I really like that. But right now, that particular set is on back order. So hopefully, they're expecting it soon. All right. And same with Sympathy. Needs trim just a little bit. Here's my trimmer. There we go. Trim just a little bit more. There we go. Attach that to this. Attach this to this. And I'm going to get, I forgot to get my dimension, oops. that there. And that over here, and that'll get glued on there, and there you go. These were two different colors. I just matched the background cardstock with a color that was in the DSP and added. And like I said, it's a very simple card, and it's a way to use up your scraps. So there you have it. Those are the three cards. Two done with the blackout technique. Remember your embossing folder. You're using the embossing folder and you're using the deboss side. And on this one, you're just using it as it is. Three easy cards. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to post them in your comments. And I think that's everything for right now. I will say that this is being recorded on June 13th. And right now, currently, we have it's 20% off of our bundles. And that's a great deal. That is a really, really good deal. So when you buy a bundle, it's 10% off when you buy it as a bundle. So basically, then they're giving you another 10% off. So you get 20% off the bundles. And that, like I said, that's a good deal versus buying the die cuts and then the stamp set. If you buy them as a bundle, right now you can save 20%. I think that's everything. I know that I rambled pretty fast. I think as I'm thinking back, I think I made a couple mistakes along the way, but I will fix them in the comments, and I will see you next month. Have a great rest of your day and have a great 4th of July. Thank you, and we'll talk to you soon.